I'm Missy. I'm the aquatic instructor here at the North Suburban Y. We're going to start with the YMCA, of course, education series, which is free and open to the public. So we encourage you to spread the word and invite everybody. We host approximately 8 to 10 of these programs a month. Anna will talk for approximately about an hour. And we hope that if you have any questions during the presentation, we'd be happy to address those at the end. Please simply type into the chat section on your screen and we relay the question to Anna at the end. You can also raise your hand and I can ask your question for yourself. I ask that you please keep your questions general and we will do our very best to address all of them in the time allotted today. Sorry. Thank you for joining me. And now I'd like to introduce you to Anna Harris from our very own North Suburban Y, here to talk about what's on a label. It's all yours, Anna.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm a trainer and instructor at the Y, and I'm also a certified precision nutrition coach. So I focus on habit-based coaching because a lot of the decisions we make are on autopilot. These are habits. So I work on changing those habits so we can live a healthier life. And one of the ways to have healthy habits is by being informed, which is why I'm doing this presentation about nutrition labels. A lot of us look at the labels. In fact, 80% of the people that look at the labels are women, probably because they do most of the grocery shopping, but also because they like to stay informed. So I wanted to go over what those labels are, why it is your superpower, why it gives you information and helps you make better decisions. I will show you how to read labels and we'll go over some examples. I will also talk about the new labels, new FDA labels that were approved in 2016, but actually went into effect now by 2020 or 2021 is the deadline for the companies to update those new labels. And finally, I'll talk about how to reduce dependence on labels and be able to eat healthy despite the labels. So let's talk about why we read the labels. And you can tell I gave you the big hint. It's your superpower. You stay informed, right? You can make more informed decisions based on food content when you know how to read the labels. If it's a medical emergency, if you're allergic, then you can learn to watch out for certain foods and ingredients. If you are diabetic, you watch for carbohydrate content and sugar content. If you are a bodybuilder or somebody working to build muscle, you look for higher protein grams. If you want to lose weight, or if you're counting your macros, you know the amounts by looking at the ingredients. So they keep us informed, but labels also ensure transparency because the manufacturers have to put exactly what they list on the label because it's the law. Those labels help us make shopping decisions. If you've ever bought a pasta sauce, you might know that the processed pasta sauce, meaning not made by you fresh, includes a lot of salt content because, salt, sugar, fat, those are the 3 ingredients that make food taste better. And the salt content could be very dramatically different. Here are 2 pasta sauce examples. The ragu with 460 milligrams of sodium per half cup. And a lot of people don't eat just half cup. Versus another pasta sauce, the cucina antica, which is 230, basically half sodium for the same amount. So when you read the label, you see that information and you can make a decision based on what works for you. If you're watching your sodium content, then maybe you'll choose the one that has a lower amount of sodium per serving. So food labels help you make those decisions. I mentioned that food labels are also helpful with transparency. So there are only a few countries in the world that require food labeling, and luckily we're one of them. Also Canada, Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand are the others, the only others in the world that require food labeling. What happens in other countries is that it's up to the manufacturer. So if you buy food manufactured from other countries, and that happens a lot, right? A lot of people get different sweets, especially that's manufactured in Europe, in other countries. The food label may not be inclusive or transparent because they don't have to list everything, and there's no oversight. There's no body that's looking over them and telling them what they must and must not include. And you might be wondering, why am I including the cigarette ad? And that is just to demonstrate what happens when there's no regulation. When, you know, the cigarette companies are telling you that the doctors tell you smoking is great, they recommend it because there's no oversight. There's nobody, or there was no oversight, nobody telling them what not to include. So having the FDA set up specific guidelines and make rules about what must be listed on the label is really important. And as you know, self-regulation doesn't work, and the cigarette business is one of those examples from the past. So there are two organizations you will hear me mention. One is USDA and the other is FDA. So the difference between the regulations between those companies, the US Department of Agriculture, they're basically responsible for safety of the food you eat. And then FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they're responsible for regulation. So they're enforcing some of the rules. So if there's a major change, like for example, Kraft lowered sodium across the board in their products, the USDA stays current with that and they test that while FDA decides how to show it on the labels. So USDA nutrient database is the best information resource. If you're wondering what is in any product, go to this link, the fdc.nal.usda.gov, and you don't need the 2 slashes at the end. You can, or you don't have to include those slashes. You will see this screen, this Food Central, Data Central, and you can look up any product. They include over 7,600 different foods, and that list is partially updated each year as there are changes. Now, they only test about 60 to 70 products out of those 7,600 each year because they have a limited budget. It's a government organization. So they get the information from the food industry. So the food industry has to disclose what is in the product, and they test, most of them test in-house. USDA then picks those 60 to 70 products, and then they send a commission of people to 12 major grocery chains, and then they collect samples, and then they maybe test 3 or 4. So for example, if they're looking at pizzas, they might collect 3 to 4 different brands and then test those. And that's why you will often see a term generic in labeling, because they can't test all of them. So they measure the macronutrients to get the calorie information. A lot of the companies I've mentioned test in-house for what goes on the label, but typically these are bigger companies. Small food companies are not required to list ingredients, any information on the label, until they make over $100,000 a year. So if you're buying a product from the smaller company, you have to be mindful of that. Now, so we've talked about how it's important to read labels, and I think you agree that it gives you information. So there's a lot of information on that label. So let's talk about what it all means. So on the right, on the following slides, you will see an example of a label. I will give you a heads up that this is a new label. This is an updated label. And later on in this presentation, I will explain what changed and why. But this is a great example from Penn Medicine. They're using a product that I think is a meat product, and you will see why as we talk about it. So first thing you look at the label is the serving size. So number one, serving size, because everything listed below is based on that serving size. It's basically putting things in perspective. So the new requirements on the new labels is to make those serving sizes more realistic. Because how often have you looked at a product that has lists information, but the measuring serving size is like 1/8 or 3/4? It's something that's really hard to put in perspective compared to what you typically eat. Or you have products where they will give you a serving size for 1 ounce, but it's a tiny bag and you might not eat just 1 ounce. So FDA now requires that serving sizes are based on actual consumption and not on ideal consumption. And packaging really influences that consumption, because if somebody buys a bag of chips or a bottle of soda, they don't typically have just 2/3 of it. So it's very important to have the serving size reflect that. And then your plate or your bowl influences what you eat as well, because you might have your cereal bowl maybe a little bit more than 2/3 of a cup of cereal. So you're probably going to use more than one serving. So be mindful that the information listed is based on that serving size. The next number is the calories. And these are based on a serving. So if you use more than one, then multiply it by that number. So here's an example. Can of soup, right, is actually 2 cups. But the serving size, if you read the back label, is 1 cup. So you get 110 calories per that serving size, 690 milligrams of sodium, it's pretty high, 7 grams of protein, right? Now, what you're probably eating is not 1 cup, but 1 can. And so that is double, because there are 2 servings in that soup. Another example is a typical serving of, in a soda bottle, a typical serving is 12 ounces, but a typical bottle is 20 ounces. So most people don't drink just 60% of the bottle. They usually drink the whole bottle. So you have to be mindful of those serving sizes and multiply the calories accordingly. So next thing I want to point out is the percent daily value. So percent daily value is on the right, typically right here on the right. And that shows you how it contributes to your total daily diet. And this is always based on a 2,000 calorie daily diet. So be mindful of that if you're not eating 2,000 calories every day. And for foods that don't have value percent listed, you use the grams. And consider how it's helping or hurting you. If you need stronger bones, for example, you might want to pay special attention to calcium, the grams and the percent. If you're watching your sugar, you might want to pay special attention to added sugars. Now, how do you know what's high, what's low, and how to put that number in perspective? The answer is, if it's 5% or below daily value, that's a low amount of that nutrient listed. If it's 20% or higher, that's high. So if you look at this label, for example, you see that saturated fat, 5%, that's fairly low, but it's at the end of the low number. If you look at the fiber, 14%, that's not low, that's a good amount, right? We want more fiber, it's better for digestion. And then you go up to added sugars, 20% here, that is a very high number. So again, if you look at the database, you will get more information on any kind of food, and you can make those decisions based on that. The next number I want to point out is fat, and that is in yellow right here. So as you may know, higher fat contributes to higher cholesterol. And if you're watching your cholesterol and overall mindful of your heart health, you have to be mindful of the total fat content. Trans fats have been banned since 2018, but products manufactured before that date can still be distributed all the way through 2021. And my guess is with the pandemic, they've been a little bit more flexible about those deadlines. So if you see trans fat listed, that means it's present in that product. If it's not listed, it's not present. So you might wonder why, okay, here's 0 grams, there are no trans fats. Why are they listed? And the reason is because foods that contain less than half a gram of trans fat per serving are labeled 0. It's rounded up to 0. But that means they're still present, and trans fats are linked to heart disease, diabetes, a host of bad things. So keep saturated fats low. Saturated fats are the ones that really contribute to heart disease and high cholesterol. So look at that number to be 5 or below. And fats are not necessarily a bad number. We need the fats. We need the fat for energy storage. We need it for metabolism, for brain health, insulation of the cells. There's a host of other reasons, body temperature and regulation. We need to consume fats. So you just have to be mindful that it's not a high number, and especially not high in saturated fats. So the next numbers, the 3, 4, and 5, the yellow, the purple, the green, those are especially important to your heart health. Saturated fats in particular raise your bad cholesterol, LDL. So that puts you at risk for heart attack and stroke. And trans fats, I've already mentioned, are linked to heart disease and diabetes, and they've been proven to cause a lot of damage to your arteries, and that's why they've been banned. And sodium, higher sodium, as you may know, contributes to higher blood pressure. So watching that sodium content is really important. Here on this label, for example, 7%. So you know that's not too low because it's above the 5% low cutoff. The recommendation for sodium is 2,300 milligrams per day. So if you want to keep it low, look for about 140, no more than 140 per food. And then be mindful of the serving size, because if you're eating more, then it would be double or triple of what's listed. By comparison, with saturated fats, by the way, the unsaturated fats are really great for the body. You can find them in nuts, fish, oil, olives, things like that. The unsaturated fats actually help lower your cholesterol, and that is a good fat to see on the label. The next couple of nutrition facts we will look at is the blue are carbs, and they're broken down. You will see fiber, sugar, and added sugar. And we need carbs for energy. So it's something, anytime I'm ready to do a workout, I always make sure I get some carbs to get that energy boost. But if you look at numbers, be mindful that it's not too high, not close to 20. Fiber is something great to have on the label and in your food, because foods high in fiber are very beneficial to your digestive health, and they also help lower cholesterol. If you're looking for more complex carbs, that is really helpful for diabetics in particular. And then higher sugar content is, you might see here there's a great amount of fiber, but then look, 20% added sugar. So that almost negates the benefits of fiber. because simple sugars and added sugars are most definitely simple sugars, raise your triglyceride numbers, which is bad for heart health. So watch out for those added sugars. And that is a great thing that's been added to the new labels because it's important to know. Something like fresh apple, for example, there's no added sugar. It's already natural sugar. But something that is added during manufacturing has to be listed as added sugar. And then number 7 is your protein, your last macronutrient. And protein is listed not as a percentage, but it's listed as grams. Protein is really important for all the cell building, and it also keeps you fuller. When I coach people, especially for weight loss, you want to consume more protein throughout the day because it keeps you fuller longer, and you don't get hungry and you don't grab unnecessary snacks. So the daily required intake of protein is 0.36 grams per pound of weight, or 0.8 grams per kilo. So what that translates into is about 56 grams for a man or 46 grams per day for a woman. But those are for sedentary people. And here, the why we're not sedentary people, right? We move, we exercise, and we will need more than that amount. So it would be about 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight is how much you need per day. Your age also matters. You know, a growing teenager is going to go through rapid cell growth, so they're going to need more protein. If you're older, your protein needs are a little bit lower. And then also your goals. You know, if you want to bulk up, you might need more protein versus less. So watch the added sugars, be mindful of the protein content, and pay really special attention to the percent daily value. Remember, 5 is the low number, 20 is the high number. Or the final thing on the label is the vitamins and minerals. So they are in this salmon color. So you want to focus here on the daily values, but be mindful of the serving size, right? If you're getting 2 servings of something, then those numbers will be higher. And getting more vitamins and minerals is great because they contain those phytonutrients that we can't always quantify that are so good to boost your immunity, and they also help brain development, protect against cognitive decline, and they give you energy too. So they overall, they add value to your body. So next up, I would like to look at some labels, and I'm going to show you an example that I have here. If you have a packaged product you can look at, you can do that with me. So in addition to the nutrition labels, I'm showing this jar of marinated artichokes. In addition to the nutrition label facts, right below, right here, see I circled, is the ingredient list. Now, if you care about what you eat, you want to know what those ingredients are, right? And the ingredients are listed from the highest concentration first. So the first ingredient here on my jar is artichoke. That's great to know. I would be really worried if the first ingredient was sodium or oil. You know, I want to know that the main ingredient I'm getting is the one ingredient I want to get. So the high ingredient listed first, and then they go in descending order. So it's proportionate to how much you have here. So it's artichokes, and then water, and then sunflower oil, and then cane vinegar, and it goes on and on and on with some preservatives as well. This listing is always below the food label, and below the ingredient listing In the US, there is a requirement by the FDA to list allergy information. So this is where you will see contains eggs, nuts, soy, dairy, and gluten. And it is different for different allergy levels. It might say may contain. If it says contains, obviously it's the highest level. The next level would be may contain. And then the next level is processed in a facility with. So that's something to look at if you have those specific allergies. And something I want to caution you when you read the labels. If I look at the label, here's an example of a keto pancake mix. If you look at those ingredients and the list is super long, it's like a dictionary and a lot of the words that you can't pronounce, I probably would walk away from that package, because that means you're getting a lot of processed foods that will be hard for your body to digest, and that may not be beneficial for your body. And so here, for example, there are only about 7 ingredients. That is pretty good. It's a pretty low number. And I can see that almond flour and eggs are listed high on the list, the first few ingredients. Those are ingredients that are high in protein, which is something I was looking for in this mix. And then below it lists that it contains eggs, milk, tree nuts. Those are your allergy information. That's your allergy information. So stay informed by reading that list. It may take time to do, but it's going to definitely benefit you in how you feel. Other information on the packaging is the best before date. So what that means, there are a couple of different terms used. There's a use by and there's best before. So the difference is use by is referred to food safety. So if it says on the product use by May 25th, and then refrigerate after or freeze after, if you don't do that, the product will spoil and you might feel sick from eating it. If it says best before, that is just referring to food quality. So it doesn't mean that it's going to go bad after that. It just means that it tastes better until that best before date. You also will see on the package a listing of where the food was produced and where it was manufactured. If you are, for example, focusing on eating more organic foods, you might pay more attention to how far from home was your food produced, if you're paying attention to eating more local foods. It will also list, the label will also list how to use and store the food. And then finally, we'll also list whether it's been genetically modified or organic. And just like labels listing that a food was genetically modified is not required everywhere in the world. It is required in Australia, South Korea, China, and Europe. It's not required here in the US. So for that reason, European Union actually does not buy a lot of the US food, especially meat, because they require the genetically modified information about the feed as well, how the cows are fed, for example. So if it's been genetically modified, they will not accept that food. And you can get more information on genetically modified versus organic on the USDA website. Now, organic listings also differ. What organic means is that a food has been grown without pesticides, fertilizers, or herbicides, and it doesn't have any added hormones or antibiotics. And the listings are different. If there's a label certified organic, that means the food is organic. And if it says 100% organic, that means it's 100% organic. If it just says organic without the seal, without the organic seal, it means it's 95% organic, which is pretty close. If it says made with organic ingredients, then it's only 70% organic. So all those numbers are fairly high, but it's, if you're looking for more information, this is how you find out reading the label, 100% versus just organic versus made with organic ingredients. And finally, a lot of the times on the label, you will see natural. What that means is free of synthetic or artificial ingredients, but it doesn't mean organic. So be knowledgeable when you read those labels. And, I have to say, a lot of the manufacturers, you look at the labels, there's a lot on the front of the package. So back of the package is usually information. Front of the package is marketing. So you can see a lot of things that might be helpful or not. So for example, you would see made with real fruit. Okay, but maybe that fruit is dried and super processed. Or maybe we'll say good source of fiber on a cereal. We've seen that many times, but tons of sugar added. Or how many cereals say part of a healthy breakfast, despite all the added sugar? Or how about foods that are vegetable based that they say are cholesterol free and fat free? Well, yeah, they never were supposed to have any cholesterol or fat because these are vegetables. So don't be fooled by the package claims. Read your ingredients, and that's how you make better decisions. So I'm going to show you one more example, and you can either look at it or look at something that you have, or one of the packaged ingredients that you have. And this is a protein bar. A lot of the people I train, when I ask them if they're getting enough protein, they might say, oh, I've got protein bars. But let's look at these ingredients. This is a bar for kids. When I look at the ingredient, first thing I see, serving size, 1 bar. That's already a win because a lot of them are actually half bar. So know the math there. Calories, 130, not too bad, right? And then we look at percent daily value. Look at that saturated fat. So it's a small number, 1 gram, but it's actually 6%. So in proportion to the bar, it's a higher number than we would like to see. Then you also see trans fats. Remember, if it says 0, that means there's 0.5 grams in that product. And trans fats is something that we never clear from the body. So avoid that. If it says trans fat, I wouldn't even buy that. And then looking at carbs and sodium, those are all good numbers. Let's look at the sugars, added sugars, 10 grams. So that's 20%, which, as you already know, is a high number. 20% is the high end. So this protein bar, as a lot of these bars are, is basically a candy bar. And it only has 2 grams of protein, which is fairly low. So be mindful, read your ingredients. If you look at the ingredients below, it does start with some good fiber-rich ingredients like oat blends, rolled oats and oat flour and oat fiber. That's positive. But I think because of the added sugar and the low protein content, I would probably look for a different bar that doesn't have as much sugar and has higher protein. So reading the labels helps you make a better decision. So preservative, Phyllis was asking about the preservative ingredients. Those preservatives are added in the ingredient list. And typically it is a long word that is hard to pronounce. Maltodextrin, one of the examples, lecithin, those ingredients, those preservatives are added. So I would say that if you're looking to eat a healthier food, it would not include a long list of preservatives. But some preservatives, like for example, citric acid is very common, and it helps acidify and keep the foods fresher longer. And let's get back to that towards the end, because I want to make sure that we cover all the material. And if you don't mind, keep that question in mind when we go through the new labels. So Phyllis, I see you have the question. Let's just get back to it towards the end, because I want to make sure that we have time to go through.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so FDA guidelines. Let's talk about what's new. So here's an example right here of the old label versus the new label. Those guidelines were updated in 2016, May of 2016, so 5 years ago. And that was the first time in 20 years that the guidelines were updated. The reason it was done, so they reflect more updated scientific information. Things have changed in 20 years, right? We know a little bit more. And there's also the scientists can definitely see that there's a link between how we eat and chronic diseases. So that was taken into account for updating these guidelines. The requirements for companies are that the manufacturers with $10 million or more in sales have to update those labels by January 1st of 2020. Those under 10 million by January 1st, 2021. So I say have to versus had to, because as you can imagine with the pandemic, things have been a little bit slower, and FDA has shown more flexibility to all the companies to update the products. So, but my guess is it's not going to take any more than another year. I don't have the information on any extensions. The goal still stood by January of 2021. So most of the labels you see should be the new labels. And the purpose of the new guidelines is to help people make more informed decisions that contribute to healthier lifestyle. It's not just the label for the sake of labeling. It's for people to know how they can eat better to prevent heart disease, to prevent diabetes, to just feel better overall, because of that link between what we eat and how we feel. So I want to show you a little video that FDA has put together to talk about the new labels.
Bold lines are definitely in.
And that clearly shows in the calories and serving size.
Such a fresh look.
New information is listed, like potassium, added sugars.
That's something we just haven't seen from them before.
This latest piece from the House of FDA says so much.
It's speaking to me.
I imagine this will be the it-wear for many seasons and years to come.
See what's new and what's been updated. The new nutrition facts label. See what's in it for you at fda.gov/new nutrition facts label.
So it's a quick demo of what we're about to talk about.
Bold lines are definitely in.
All right. So here's the old label, right next to it, the new label. So let's talk about what's changed. Number one, serving size. You see how it's small under the old one? On the new one, it's more pronounced. You can clearly see it. It's in bold type. And it's more, not only it's bigger, but it's also more appropriate to what people typically eat or drink. So it's, you know, if you eat a bag of chips, it's not going to list half a bag as your serving size. Your serving size is going to be a bag. So if it's an entire package, it's appropriate serving, then that must be listed as a serving. So it's more realistic to what people consume. Also, the calories are very prominent. So you could see them before, but now it's something that really jumps at you on the label. So FDA recognizes, so a lot of people watch the amount of calories they eat. And so that makes it for a quicker, easier decision, this information being so prominent. Percent daily value information is also explained more clearly. So before it just said it's based on a 2,000 calorie diet, the daily value may be higher or lower depending on what you need. Now it explains what it actually is. The daily value tells you how much a nutrient in a serving contributes to a daily diet. So you understand it a little better. It's still based on a 2,000 daily calorie diet. And then the values themselves have been updated, so the numbers may have changed a little bit. So you will see something that was 12%, now it's 10%. So these numbers have been updated. So here's another example. Serving sizes are updated based on how much people actually consume now. So original serving size for an ice cream was a half cup, but the scientific information shows them that people actually have a 2/3 cup in one sitting. So that is 270 calories. So the serving size have been updated to be more realistic with what people consume. So that changes the amount of serving per package. And you know, a serving size is not a recommendation of what people should eat. It's just a better reflection of reality. Now, other changes on the labels are nutrients that have been removed. So in the past, it listed calories from fat, and that is no longer listed. And the reason is it's not the fat overall that causes any damage in the body. It's the saturated fat, the type of fat or trans fat. So that is more significant. So that's why the calories from fat are taken off, and you still see the saturated fat and trans fat listed if they're present. Other information that's been taken out is vitamins A and C are no longer required because deficiencies in those vitamins are very rare. So it's not really as important to list. And as I said, it's not required, but it doesn't mean that the company will not list it. So they decide to do that based on the product a lot of the time. So it's voluntarily listed. There's information that's been added. And something that I think is really, really helpful is the added sugar. So before you just saw sugars, but you don't know what percent of it is something that has additives and preservatives. So that is information that is now added. So you can make a more informed decision. So what are those added sugars? It could be sugars that are added during processing. So those examples are sucrose and dextrose. So when you see those words in the ingredients as well, you know that those are sugars. It could be that is packaged as sweetened sugar. It could be sugars from syrup, so honey, or it could be sugars from concentrated fruit or juice. So that is all under added sugar. And then you can find more detail if you read below the nutrition fact label in the ingredient list. Other things that are added are vitamin D and potassium. So the reason those are added is because most Americans don't get enough of those vitamins, and they're really important to your health. Vitamin D helps reduce osteoporosis, and potassium helps counteract the blood pressure, high blood pressure. So in addition to that, the actual grams, the actual vitamin amounts are listed. So for example, before you just saw the daily value percent, but now you actually see the grams, so you can make a more informed decision. So let's talk about how we can reduce the dependence on the labels and find that freedom from labels. And I'm going to show you this tomato. Okay, it doesn't have a label in real life, but you know, the only thing that it consists of is a red ripe tomato. So as you can imagine, where I was going to is that fresh food has minimal ingredients and maximum value. So when you shop, start on the perimeter of the store is where you get your fresh food, where nothing is added to it. You know, there are no preservatives. And frozen food is as good as fresh. You have to read the label, of course, and make sure that it doesn't have anything extra added. But it's packed at maximum freshness, so it's as good as fresh. And if you're looking to save time, you can always buy cut up fruit and veggies. Just make sure the package doesn't list anything extra added. Sometimes citric acid is added just to keep it from spoiling, but it has no harm, does no harm. So yeah, reading labels takes time. If you go shopping, it takes time to read those labels. And if you look at the package that has, 5 ingredients, it's not going to take you a long time to decipher and figure out what that means and what's in it. So look at packages with shorter ingredient lists. So you will spend less time thinking and shopping, and also less math, unless you really like doing more math. It also is more uncertainty because sometimes there are ingredients you don't know or not familiar with. You can also save time by getting fresh or frozen food versus packaged. You can plan what you want to cook, and you can prep when you have time. So you can kind of make it work for you on your own time. And go beyond the label. Numbers are important, and this whole presentation has been about numbers, but I want you to focus on quality versus quantity, to include more whole and unprocessed foods, and prioritize ingredients, the quality of ingredients over the calories. And I really, I know I've been talking about numbers, but I want to encourage you to go beyond calorie counting, but focus on eating more real food. And when you eat more slowly and mindfully, so you know what you're eating, you can taste your food. You can also shrink your portion sizes by eating until you're satisfied, not to the point of being stuffed, and waiting to be hungry until you eat again. And know that more information is not always better. So that refers to having shorter ingredient lists that you don't have to think through, by keeping it real, keeping those foods fresher. So if you want more information, I wanted to share a little bit about what I do with nutrition coaching. What it is, it's not meal plans, it's not diets. It's a lifelong approach by building sustainable habits. So eating healthy becomes automatic. I've talked before about how when we drive, you get in the car, you put your seatbelt on, it's automatic. You can do the same thing with nutrition habits. You develop those habits so when you act, it becomes automatic, and those healthier choices become automatic. I look at the realistic approach for your life, not a cookie cutter plan. If you're somebody that doesn't like certain proteins, I'm not going to force it on you. It's something that it has to be sustainable so you can use it lifelong. And I help with coaching. I help with accountability and staying consistent by detailed progress checking and offering support whenever you need it. I do it with ProCoach Nutrition, Precision Nutrition ProCoach software. It's very easy to use and has a lot of great resources. And I do weekly Zoom or in-person meetings. And if you're tired of quick diets and want to make nutrition and fitness a more permanent part of your life, I can definitely help you with that coaching. It's the same cost as personal training at the Y, and you can start with as little as 4 weeks to fine-tune some eating habits, or you can go 12 weeks to see a more significant change. So if you have more questions, I would like to open the floor for questions right now. And see. Okay, so if you have a question, maybe raise your hand or put it in the chat.
I'm not sure if you can see me.
Okay, Mary Lou?
Yes. So when I read a label and I'm reading about the sugars, and it also has carbohydrates listed, do the carbohydrates convert? Should I be mindful of the fact that carbs convert into sugars as well, or do I have that wrong?
Yes, when your body processes the carbs, they'll be broken down into simple sugars. But I think the number that is more significant is the added sugar.
Added.
Because we need the, everything comes down in the body for energy into sugar. We need that sugar to function, right? We need that energy for everything. But the added sugars are the ones that cause damage. And I would also look at percentage of the daily value. So if it's something that, for example, is 25%, unless you're about to go run somewhere or do an intense workout, a higher carb level is not necessary, because all the excess carbs are going to get stored in the body. Does it answer your question? Yeah. Are there any other questions? Phyllis, did you want to follow up on any preservatives you mentioned earlier?
Well, I think that's tricky because I'm not talking about like color additives. Those I try to stay away from, but it's hard to do that when you take any medicines. But in food, there's a range of extra things that are frequently there, like citric acid is fine, but some of the things that have many more syllables, as you know, if you can't readily figure them out, then I've been told stay away from them. You may not recognize something like maltose, dextrose, blah, 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 and yet that's a sugar. And the same thing, even though it's honey sounds better, but it's processed, and maybe it has less processing, but it's still a sugar, and it's an added sugar. So, it's tricky sometimes, and sometimes a little more subtle with the labels than one would think.
I would 100% agree that if something is hard to pronounce, I would walk away from that, because foods that are processed are harder to process in the body, and you don't know how they affect you. Testing might be done in the lab, but the lab is not a human body, so you don't know 100% how it affects you. So avoiding those processed ingredients will be better for your health.
Anna, the analysis of ingredients, the guidelines you provided today, I thought were very helpful, and understanding the relationships of them. I think for weight loss, though, and I don't mean a strict diet, but just in general, weight loss, it becomes somewhat problematic, because you could balance out 3 meals a day, but it's not like you're sitting there taking your temperature with everything you're eating to, figure out, gee, is that too much sugar? Because it didn't come out of a can, but it was fresh. And trying to find the balance amongst the ingredients or foods that you intake seems to me also a difficulty. It's not just a label, but it's putting it together, adding it all up, I think, is where it becomes a little more trickier.
Yeah, I can see that. I think throughout the day, the most important focus for especially weight loss would be having a higher protein content. So
yes, I know.
Your metabolism overall, and you would use more calories to digest that. As for those products with sugar, it's not, the sugar that you get from fruit is going to be quickly digested compared to the added sugars that are going to slow down the whole digestive process. So I think looking for fresh and a shorter ingredient list is
sure
when it comes to but when eating throughout the day for weight loss, I think the most important thing is eating slowly, because when you slow down, you can get those hunger cues, and you really know, okay, am I getting almost full? And that's a point to stop. So feeling that hunger, feeling that fullness is I think the most important thing, and that helps you stay at a better portion level throughout the day and a better calorie balance overall.
And when you go to eat, is it better to wait till you pass that prime hunger pitch, or eat when you are that hungry?
I would say eat when you're hungry. And a lot of us don't eat when we're hungry. You know, a lot of people used to tell me I didn't eat breakfast because I wasn't hungry. You know, and at first I used to say for years, you know, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You got to eat your breakfast, right? But when we kind of reverse engineered it and found out that, did some detective work, they ate late in the evening. So of course, if you eat late, you're not going to be hungry in the morning.
Right.
So you have to wait until you are hungry, and then maybe later on address that night eating. And then, are you really eating because you're hungry? So waiting to eat, and that, you know, when you eat out, wait until you're hungry. And when you eat slowly. Food and know, like I like almost like a gas meter, you know, is it empty? Is it getting close to full?
Sure.
So getting close to full, like 3/4 full, this is where I would stop. Because I've mentioned this before, it takes about 20 minutes for your stomach to send the signal to your brain that you're full. So if you eat faster than 20 minutes, you might be full before you even get to those 20 minutes.
Right. Thank you. That was very helpful.
Slowing down is really the most helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if you have any other questions, if you can't think of something now, but sometimes they come up later, you can email me at fiteatrest@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or look up some information and answer any questions.
Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
Thank you so much for being here.
So yeah, thank you, Anna. This was wonderful. I learned a lot. So this basically concludes our YMCA Education Series presentation for today. I want to thank you guys all for supporting the North Suburban Y. And just want to remind you guys that next Wednesday is the Northbrooks Heritage Peonies virtual event. If you have not registered for it, please do so. And if you have any questions for Anna, she is always around our Y. And we hope to see you guys around the Y soon. Have a great day, guys.